What a new day. I'm so excited for this, but I'm not. So, in case you haven't guessed, the next reaction that I'm going to do is to the Netflix movie Pieces of a Woman. The main cast includes Vanessa Kirby of The Crown, a Princess, Shia LaBeouf from Holes in Disney, Ellen Burstyn, great actress, and comedian Ilza Schlesinger. So I'm really excited to review this because of how much realism is in this, because there's a lot of it. But also because it's the most in-depth first reaction video I've done so far, besides a few clips here and there, so this is going to be fun. And very difficult because I cry every time I watch it. It's emotional. It's about the loss of a newborn baby. I'll warn you that. Anyone that's had birth trauma, although there's really not any birth trauma itself in this overtly, there might be experience from that have connections to other traumas, but there is definitely a newborn loss in this that affects the entire family. And what I'm going to focus on, here's my preface. I got a preface here for you. My preface for this is not just those trigger warnings, but that I'm going to focus on the realism of the birth scene, which is basically the opener of the movie, nearly, and how realistic, but how diverse the grief of losing a child can be, or death at a home birth, or losing a newborn. It affects everybody differently. This is not my commentary on the way to grieve. This is my commentary of sometimes grief doesn't look typical, but it's all normal, and that's my point. And I hesitated to even include the grief part, except that I don't know if I want to come back to this movie or not. It's emotional, and it's a lot. And I'm almost crying just thinking about it. I'm also going to be making some comments about the film side of this. I am not an experienced filmmaker. I'm definitely a film connoisseur when it comes to birth scenes, and especially birth prosthetics. Gratefully, those have progressed through the decades. It used to be just a pillow, and it was awful. But the prosthetic, there's actually 2 prosthetics in this that I know of, that I can see, that are just fabulous. So you can see in this. So let's get into it. Now that we figured out how to edit with what we have already, how to do a picture-in-picture, this is going to be so much better for the viewing audience. So here we go. Loading up my viewing of it while you watch it, and that's what my earpieces are for. So we're just watching. A piece of late pregnancy is nesting, and you see it with a lot of mammals. Quite frankly, birth for humans is not really that much different than all of the animal kingdom. As much as we want to think that we're different and special, when it comes to birth, we're not as different. There's definitely some differences. There's intellect about it. Our socialness is different. She's basically wearing it's like a onesie kind of thing, and it's attached underneath her butt by way of a thong. So you don't see the strange extra tugging on the skin because it's a bodysuit. You can definitely tell that's Vanessa Kirby's butt. So again, something that really helps not only during late pregnancy, what I call the transition of pregnancy. The end of pregnancy just looks different. It's more intense. It's more emotional. There's different kinds of things that happen during the transition of pregnancy, which is different than the transition of parenthood. Depending on who's watching that, I have to point that out. The transition of pregnancy ends with birth. Transition of parenthood or motherhood extends into postpartum, and that's a difference. So something that really helps in the transition of pregnancy is rest time, meditation, calmness, naps, mindfulness. It also helps in those early stages of labor when you don't know whether or not you're in labor, or you know you're in labor and you're just trying to get through it. Those things help. So.
Should I call her? Give some water or something? Very well.
So she's starting to walk around a little bit. This is really common for home births. Definitely starting to feel it. You can tell that she's not the interactive self that she was earlier in the movie at the car dealership or with friends at work for her maternal leave party at work in the scene before that. And that's what birth professionals call being in birthland. The mentality and maybe the personality is a little bit more closed in. And Dad is being very typical. What can I do? What can I do? And that's normal. He offers to call the midwife, which is great, especially if they're concerned and want to talk. He starts to talk to their midwife, Barbara, the main one that they've talked to. 99.9999% of home birth midwives have a backup. I don't know one that doesn't. So this is where things are going to get a little tense for them. But apparently they've already called and checked in with Barbara and said, hey, I think we're in labor. Okay, well, call me back. So they're calling back. He's obviously been to a childbirth class with her because he's got the terminology. We're getting our rhythm, and that's how it goes with labor. It's just finding your pace. Contractions will not be patterned, but you just got to find a way to get through each one or each group of them or whatever. I can hear in his voice that we want you to come, but we don't want to tell you that we want you to come. I want to be reassured that it's time for you to come because I feel like it's time for you to come because this is getting intense for us. That's normal, especially for first births, because it's the first time things are going to shift here. This is not what they're expecting.
Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, it's new, but what can you do? Okay, well, just keep us up to speed while on the phone. Thank you.
He gets off the phone with Barbara and starts to prep his wife for, okay, things are not going to go the way we wanted them to go, expected them to go.
Things might change. We're flipping cards.
No way.
So flipping cards, there is childbirth educator game. You lay out your cards of this is what we want this is our birth plan, this is what we want for the birth. What if one of those things doesn't happen? You flip the card over and something different is going to happen instead. So that's what they're experiencing. And she's starting to process this.
So Barbara has...
So now Mom has found out that her midwife is busy with something else. This is not what a woman in labor wants to hear. And in the hospital, a woman would never hear that. What they would hear is your doctor or midwife is still at their office, and as soon as they get done with their appointments, they'll come over, or they're on their way, which actually means they'll come at the end of the day. Very often is what that means. So this is not good news for her, is how she's feeling. And it's really reasonable for a mom to want to hear the voice of the midwife because there's an emotional connection that's built throughout the prenatal period. And so to have that contact of, I need to hear from you what's going on. So
I'm not in control. I'm just relaying information. Yeah, so she'll be here when she can get here. That's what I'm saying. Just calm down. Just calm down. Let's do something.
Eva's the backup midwife or the partner.
Distract me with something.
So she says, distract me with something, which is a great thing to do in any labor. Laughter during labor is fabulous. It not only helps keep the mood light and reducing the stress hormone cortisol, you're getting more oxygen. It makes you feel more relaxed. So let's see what he comes up with here.
Joke or something? A joke about something you like? What's in the fridge? Broccoli? Broccoli's in the fridge? Broccoli's favorite music. You know what it is? You know what broccoli's favorite music is? Rock and roll.
No,
Yes, it is.
that doesn't go with
Where does
broccoli
broccoli go get a drink?
Where?
At the salad bar. Come on, G, come on!
You're so pathetic.
So now her membrane has ruptured. Very, very, very typically, most often, when this membrane ruptures, it's like a small spurt. It's like a few tablespoons. It's not the gush. That too many movies have made it out to be this big flood that happens in the produce aisle. Okay, don't get me started. We're focusing on the good things about this movie. This is typically what happens is it's, oh, wait, I'm not sitting on the toilet and I feel like I'm peeing on myself. That's a very common way to relate that. So, but it's very common for that rupture to change contractions with the very next contraction, or in addition, make the next contraction come faster than the last ones had been. So this is going to change for them again. So this is really common. And she's making sounds now, which is really typical, common. It's a good thing to do. Sound is not a bad thing. Sound actually helps because it vibrates the body. And those vibrations definitely resonate through all of the tissues, but also with bones. So this is really common for things to just shift. Things get more intense after bag ruptures. And she's doing a great job at breathing. She's sucking air in. The oxygen is good. I'm going to pause it here right before she gets on the ball. She's getting kind of testy. I don't want to do the stretch thing. And expressing desires is a good thing, but usually with this tone of voice of, I don't want to do this. This is really common when a mom is getting close to or is in what's called transition. It's the last part of dilating. It gets really intense then, and rupture of membranes is really common during this time period. It's one of the more common time periods for that to happen. A lot more common than the produce aisle.
That's what they gave it to us for. Why don't you get on your knees and do the stretch?
And she says, I don't really want to do this. That's also a comment that's frequently made during transition. And the burp starts, and she's sounding like she made the comment that she's nauseous. She says this feels weird. That's really common during transition too, because baby, I typically would pull the baby out for instruction, but I want to stay focused on this movie. But during transition is when baby does more maneuvering. Head actually does maneuvers with their head around in the pelvis. So those sensations can feel strange to mom. I'm sorry for breaking this for people, but I have to talk about how awesome this is, of how well they manage this prosthetic, because they need some kudos. This is awesome. So behind the scenes, we can't see that they're helping Vanessa, the actress, set up her body with this prosthetic and make sure everything is in the right place. Anytime that there's a focus on a character that's not Vanessa, so she's turned around so he can rub her back, which is another great thing to do for late labor, anytime during labor. Now, here, when she says, I might throw up, in home births, somebody is running to grab a bucket, because we never know when I might throw up turns into actually throwing up. Throwing up happens maybe about 25% of the time. If I'm wrong, there's going to be a correction above my head. He said that she hadn't eaten very much, so that can contribute to wanting to throw up, because your body's going through a lot of calorie consumption. So we're in between contractions, and she can stop and have a conversation, which again, this is really common. And she's recognizing that he's having an emotional experience about this. And it's really common for couples to be affectionate with each other. I don't know exactly how much time went, because it looked like maybe there was a little bit of a scene shift between the phone call and before her membrane ruptures. If that was a one shot, then that was a pretty fast arrival for Eva. She may have been speeding. She may have been, just a few miles down the road and already ready to go. Barbara may have already told her, hey, you might think about heading in their part of town. Sometimes that'll happen with members. So Eva has arrived. I love this actress. She's fabulous. I'm going to go ahead and let it go, and I'm going to talk over this, that this is really common for a midwife. She'll come in slowly and quietly because she doesn't know what she's walking into. She doesn't want to just come charging in when mom may want some quiet. So they'll start off with quiet and, hey, what's going on? And before there's instruments anywhere, first we're going to check on what stage of labor are we looking at? How fast do we need to go? Let's assess that first. So mom is updating the midwife about how she's feeling and how this has been going. She's reassuring her. A doula also would do this. It's really normal for you to feel like this. She's being really nice and comforting about, you know, I know that your normal midwife isn't here. I'm still going to take care of you. And if Barbara can get here, she will. So, of course, since the membrane's ruptured, then these are going to go faster than more intense. And Dad feels really intense, obviously. This is really awful. This is really common for the late stage. This is common for transition. If you have any painkillers, midwives, at least in Oklahoma, and that's the only thing I can speak of because that's where I live. Midwives at home births don't carry painkillers. You might carry some herbs that will help with pain, but there's definitely no prescriptions here. Eva's just reminding Martha to just ride through it, and in the meantime, because Eva can see how intense this is, or it sounds like it's been going, she wants to jump right into the medical side of things. Let's listen to the baby's heart. Commonly, most midwives like for mom to lay back to be able to get, especially this first one, to make sure that they can get in, get it done, and let mom go to whatever position they want to go to. But it's always reassuring to hear that. So they know the baby's a girl.
I'm going to do, Martha, see where you're at, okay? I'm going to do a little internal exam.
Next, she's going to do a cervical exam to check and see how far dilated she is. I'm going to go ahead and talk through some of this. There's that great bump. We're going to see a lot more of it here coming up soon. There's a lot that a midwife can tell with a cervical exam more than just dilation. You know, how far down is the baby? Is the cervix symmetrical? Is the cervix thinned out? Typically, it's not comfortable. Sometimes it can be. Because she's saying she's already 6 centimeters. And the baby as well. So the baby's definitely doing well. It's basically how this exam is going. So medical exam is done, and now the midwife is going to be urging her to do what it takes to get through the contractions. And notice she turns over as soon as this contraction starts to build. She turns herself over from off of her back because having a contraction on your back, it feels worse. And Dad's doing a great job comforting her. It's really hard for dads to sit by and watch their partner going through probably the most intense pain they've ever seen on them before. So sometimes when moms are struggling to cope, and I'm still letting it run, it's easier to let them take advantage of hydrotherapy, which means getting in the bathtub. A lot of people enjoy bathtubs, not everybody. So getting mom into the bathroom. You're nice, but I can't do this. Okay, so I'm going to pause it. It's really common in home births for anybody in the process of an exam or helping mom feel better, doing whatever comfort measures she needs, can end up getting into strange positions or locked in a corner like Dad was, where he's pinned up against a chair there and had to like crawl out from under her. But it's going to take both of them to help her get up. Her brain is focused on her belly. That's where all of her brain is going. So it's taking some effort to do this.
No, you can walk. Come on, you can walk. Let's go.
And walking is going to help. Getting in the bath is going to help.
There you go.
I love that
I've done this
basically
before.
this whole, at least from the rupture of membranes, this whole, and this walk is really, really common too. To get through contractions or in between contractions that even between, just the body just doesn't feel good. It's really intense feeling.
You guys go on and get in the bath. I'm gonna stand up.
Smells during labor are definitely important to pay attention to, because moms can definitely be even more sensitive to smells during labor than they were during pregnancy. So, since the midwife knows that the couple is going to do fine getting in the tub, he's helping her. As long as she keeps an ear out, which I guarantee you she's listening the entire time she's doing this. Eva is grabbing her, all of her tools, and see, again, they've also checked to make sure that this prosthetic is going to be in all the right places, nothing sticking out in the wrong place. And that belly's not going to show very much, I think, until they get into the bedroom. But you can see the midwife is got a little bit of speed here. She can tell that this could potentially be a really quick birth. So to try and get through setting things up as fast as possible, especially since it's just her. She doesn't have an assistant. There's no doula there who could also help a bunch. And I love this one shot. She's obviously relaxed. This belly is just awesome. The belly button sticks out. The bottom edge of it is not terribly great. This part is silent. She knows that he's nearby. But the whole belly is just great. And he is great help for her. And partners can be great help for the person that's in it. There's an intense contraction. Being in the water helps some. Some midwives have called this the aquadural. She said, I think I'm going to poop myself. She's probably feeling baby's head down at the rectum towards the perineum, between being engaged or at 0 station. Now, I have to admit that this particular review of looking at it, these contractions are not reality length. So she's had 2 or 3 contractions in the tub already. And you can hear this sound, that I want to push sound. And with fast births, it's really common to have what's called bloody show. It's a very, very old term that's still used as the cervix dilates. Little capillaries that have grown during pregnancy do a little bit of breaking. Cervix is not tearing. It's doing its normal thing. So the midwife has put her on her back specifically just for the exam. And Martha saying ow could very possibly also be because of the baby and not the midwife. That's common for that to happen. So the midwife has not been able to feel any cervix, which almost always means being completely dilated. So she's trying some pushing.
You can push, okay? No, we just keep. Oh my God.
And this open mouth is really, really good. And sometimes in early pushing, it's really common for moms to do this running away thing. It's really common and normal in natural birth. And the midwife is using earbuds to listen to the heartbeat because sometimes the heart rate can do some strange fluctuations at this stage of labor during pushing. The midwife isn't going to want the parents to be unnecessarily worried if it's just a temporary strange heart rate, like maybe it drops but it comes back up. It's good to have all of the information, but at that time, mom needs to focus on the birth.
Okay, Martha, I'm going to move you onto your side.
So apparently the baby doesn't like being in this position.
Yeah, just
The midwife is going to have her roll over on her side.
Okay.
The left side is what would be done. She's going to push with her knee pulled up.
Okay. Bear down. Good.
So your knee is pulled up.
Good.
I'm having a hard time with some of these subtitles. It kind of frustrates me. But
Okay. Is she okay?
it's really common for moms to be pushing and they don't really have a connection between what they're internally feeling and what's externally happening. So it's not uncommon for moms to either be convinced that nothing is working, nothing's happening. It's really common for moms to also, on the other hand, be convinced that they worked hard enough that the baby should be out by now. This is really intense. That's all of it, right? This is when things really shifted here. Has stepped out to get a phone and also talk to dad really quick between contractions. This wouldn't happen during contractions unless it was just absolutely necessary. But she's made the comment to dad, okay, she's been listening to it quietly. He hasn't heard that there have been 2 consecutive contractions, that heart tones didn't sound good.
Like this, we might have to call it back up. We might have to transfer to the hospital. But I'm watching.
So between contractions, the heart rate isn't coming back up to normal. It's just staying down. And so she's letting him know what the game plan is going to be so that one of them knows. And she's reassuring, I'm watching what's going on. I'm keeping an eye on it. It's not that I'm just going to let this happen. He wants a little bit more reassurance than this. It's also really common. She just asked for her mother. It's really common to want the comfort and support of mom, especially if they've had a supportive relationship with their mother or parent. It's really common for this to happen too. Martha is determined she wants to go sit in a chair to sit up. It was a great idea. And just didn't get there because the next contraction came. So she's going to end up, she's now in hands and knees. And all of these multiple position changes, that's common, especially with home birth. You can hear a little bit of the midwife getting emotional. She's being reassured, okay, things are going to be okay, this baby's coming out. And she's going to listen to heart tones again since that contraction is done.
Call 911, tell them we have a home delivery.
And it's not good.
Okay. Martha, we need to get this baby out now. Where's the phone at? Okay?
And this is the right thing to do. If there's something going on and she needs to be focusing on medical attention, to send dad. Unfortunately, that's mom's support. But if there's nobody else, he's going to make the call.
Hi, I'm at 423 Formosa. I need somebody to
And in the meantime, they are setting up the next scene for that room with 2 prosthetics. It's a graphic birth scene is coming. So she's pushing really well. Now, she would not be sitting up. In the previous video, I complained about moms sitting up. She wouldn't be sitting up this straight and be able to get a baby out. But here's the crowning. So baby is definitely coming out. The fastest part is typically between crowning and birth. Now, obviously, that's not a newborn baby. Since child labor got cracked down on, there's limited time periods that you can use infants. I don't remember exactly, but it's like minutes. It's like 30 minutes at a time that you can use them on camera nonstop, and then you have to give them a break. And then those restrictions get increased the older that they get until 18, and then you have no restrictions on child actors. Baby hasn't been pulled up to Martha's chest yet, except for now baby's crying, and that's the reassurance you heard in the last video, that reassurance of the first cry. She's been listening to baby's heart rate, and she's breathing well, and you can tell from her movements she's definitely acting normal at this stage. So Eva hands the baby off to the parents, and they're just in the birth high of, yay, this is over, and here's the baby we've been wanting to clamp eyes on this whole time, and putting a blanket on to keep the baby warm, because they don't keep themselves warm well. I don't know a midwife who would react this emotional, but this is cinematically out of the view of the parents. But realistically, they're still in the same room with a mirror. And the mirror was a great cinematic piece, so that there was still a reflection here, reflecting to herself. But, when things felt safe, the midwife might say, I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick. I haven't gotten a chance to go to the bathroom yet. She'll go in there and sob her face off. That happens. So this midwife is, you can see her from 3 different angles. Somebody's taking pictures. And then you can hear, you probably can't hear it, but the baby's, the baby's struggling to breathe. And this isn't good. Right after birth, after sounding good, this is not a good thing. Eva has grabbed her. She's turned bluish.
Come on, baby.
911 had already been called, so they're on their way. So she's using an ambu bag on the baby that I can hear. Dad has run out into the street. We're here, we're here. I was going to make another comment about the paramedic driver would not have the medical bag in the cab. It would be in the back. The paramedic partner, because they always travel in partners, would just grab it and run out the back. So now we're going to shift to normal grief. So she's going back to work after all this. She's come to work, and there's something new on the wall that she hadn't noticed before. And now everyone is surprised that she's there. But it's quite possible that she's one of these women that work and routine is a coping skill. And so that's probably why she's here. So she's come to her office, and someone's sitting in it. So it's probably a temp. They said, hey, this gal is out. You can just use her desk. So this guy is...
It's just my time off has run out. So
my time off has run out.
Yeah.
One of
recognize me. I'm a friend of yours.
has found her in the store.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we've bridged together, of course. Yes.
And she's doing the typical thing of, are you doing okay?
Yeah. Your mom tells me absolutely.
Your mother tells me everything. This is not helpful. This is just not helpful. Trying to feel for someone in this kind of grief this is not helpful. The medical examiner is talking to the parents, and the dad is just in shock that there's no answers, there's no explanation. And unfortunately, when it comes to miscarriages or baby death, newborn death, there's not always answers. He takes off, but Martha gets information about maybe an option, what can be done with her daughter's body besides just burying it. So she decides that she's going to donate it to science so that maybe studying can produce an answer. And the gravestone is being made for the baby. This is a normal grief reaction coming up. People want to take care of the grieving parents and do things for them. And sometimes that means just automatically acting from their own bias or their own perspective. So just spelled the baby's name. This doesn't go over.
Well, that doesn't make any sense at all, because name is her last name. And we chose the American spelling for you.
Yeah, but it's a small detail.
Small detail.
Yeah.
You're right. No, it's a small detail. Small detail.
It's a small
It's not
detail
gonna be a funeral anyway.
for other people, but for Martha, it was a really big
I didn't mean it like that.
detail. And it is common for
Change the spelling. Just at least pick which style.
newborn death, for
What?
the final arrangements to be very, very, very important, because it's that final. It's not only the final
There's really no
arrangements,
point.
but
Just-
it's
I'm going to donate
basically
your body to the university, so
encompassing
this is just
the
like-
baby's entire life, which for Yvette was just a few minutes for some reason. And I'll warn you, this movie doesn't ever address what actually was the cause of Yvette's death. Because her body was being donated to science, there's not a funeral. They're just having a marker to satisfy other people. She's done with the conversation, and she's taking care of herself, removing herself from the conversation. Martha has come to medical university, and so baby's grandma is coming to plead with, can we at least do this one thing that I want to do? And that's really hard for a grieving parent to hear, because their relationship with the child that has passed away is more important than other people's wishes.
Like an animal. Yeah, that's funny to you.
Yeah. So cheap.
Then we get into the court case against the midwife. There's lots of other family drama that happens in between, but this is important for my review. All the family has showed up at court. And understandably, Eva wants to visibly check on Martha, because grieving the loss of a child is really difficult. Martha is now on the stand as a witness. What I am going to say about this court case is that this is very, very common for deaths that happen during or starting from a home birth. Midwives are constantly prosecuted, whether it's the parent's desire or not. Currently, as of this date, there are at least a couple states in the United States where home birth midwifery is illegal, which statistically doesn't make any sense, but it's legislatively happened. I will say that not very many obstetricians get pursued this way. This was such a short time span between the first non-reassuring heart tones and distress for the baby. That was a short time period. That was just a few minutes. And 911 was already on the way. There was not really any way to do this faster. Some people would say the one answer to that is to give birth in the hospital, and that may not have prevented this death. We don't know exactly what the cause was. But now the defense is going to put Martha on trial, which is an awful experience as a grieving parent.
Was your body warm or cold?
One of the points that I talked over there was the prosecution made a comment about the time period that Martha was in the tub and how many times they remembered the midwife checking a heart rate. We can see on screen, and probably would happen in home births where there might be like video recording. The heart tones were checked really often. They weren't checked in the tub, but her being in that tub for that time period did not cause this baby. If she was in the tub for an hour or two without much hydration, that might have been a different story. So this is going to be a very unusual circumstance where the mother just walks back into court. That, number one, just walking back into court is disruptive and disrespectful, but she's grieving and she has something she wants to say, but she definitely wants to speak up, and the judge lets her have a voice. Usually this is a lot more structured. She would have consulted with her attorney very specifically about what she was going to say or not say. There would have been a discussion with the opposing counsel and the judge, but this is a movie. So she's going to make this comment about her birth. She's looking around the room, including her family.
This woman
This midwife.
did not intentionally harm my girl.
Which is a big,
She only wanted to deliver a healthy baby.
it's a big relief for a midwife to hear.
And I do not think it is your fault. I do not think it is her fault. Thank you.
And she looks at her mom and sister.
There might be a reason for what happened, but we are not going to find it here in this room. And if I stand here and ask for
This is a very
compensation or money,
understandable grief statement.
Then
So
I
she
am-
has
I'm saying that I
recognized
can't
that
be
this
compensated,
midwife
and I can't.
really struggled with the experience of that
I
birth.
can't bring her back.
Not just her personal
No
experience
money
of
or
it, but the
verdicts or
professional
sentences can-
experience of it. She did everything she could. While it was
bring
a
back
nice thing to do for the parents to stay at home for another contraction,
How can
it was
you
also
give this pain to
medically
someone
reasonable because
who's already
it is
suffered?
possible for that heart rate to recover and
I
just
know
be
she would
fine.
not.
And everything's fine and we don't know what caused it. That can happen. Sometimes there's an answer. There's
not
just
why
a
my
wide
daughter
experience.
came to this
And the emotional
By the time she
experience
did.
of that can be really, really changing. Life changing. Career changing. So I'm going to end it there. I'm probably going to go have a good cry and some chocolate. Thank you for going on this journey with me. It's definitely an emotional movie. I have seen it many more times than I want to in the preparation of this, but definitely want to ask you to please be kind to all your fellow human beings, no matter their diversity.